definitely no feathers.
No feathers at all. Not on the legs, anyway. All over the rest
You
of the
didn't
body,
see.
sure.
You didn't see the Mortal Kombat movie, did you?
No,
Yeah.
I did not. Because you guys watched it
Like
after I already went to bed. I had a headache last night, and I took like some Tylenol and went to bed like immediately after you were done with your stream. I didn't even finish the map I was working on. I just finished it earlier today.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Around like 4 o'clock. Now I just need to litter it with enemies. That's all I got to do.
Did you put this out on Mines?
No, I forgot to. I'm not doing anything about it now.
Okay, fine.
At like, I became acutely aware of that around like 7:50, and I was like, eh.
Yeah. That's a great attitude.
Yeah. I love your minds, but I'm doing a lot of stuff during setup as it is.
Well, I saw. Yeah, you knew that. I watched Mortal Kombat with Rick last night, and I will not spoil it for anyone, but I think it's worth a watch. I think it's worth, if you have a theater that's open nearby, I would recommend it.
Yeah, I prefer watching anything in the theaters, but unlike say Godzilla vs. Kong, I have no problem watching this on a smaller screen.
Yeah, I mean, if you have access to watch it at home, it's good at home as well.
Yeah.
That's how we watched it.
What's the topic now? The topic is welcome to the Vomitorium Weekday show. As always, I am your host, The Metal, and joining me is my co-host, Marsupial Gamer over here. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing. I went for a walk in the rain earlier. It was nice. It was just slightly drizzling. Nice little, not a sun shower. It was overcast, but it was just nice little sprinkling.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of started to drizzle this morning, but apparently it's going to start raining for real tonight here.
Yeah, I think the same here. I don't know why our stuff is synced up unless there's just like this huge wall moving across in the same direction.
Wait, you say it's going to start raining there tonight?
Well, it's already done a light raining. It's going to get heavier tonight. So I don't know if it's coming down at like an angle or something, but yeah. It's already started thundering. Like we got some heavy thunder already. It's letting us know. Might have even started already because I think it's going to hit a little bit earlier here than it does where you are.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. But anyway, I would say, I often change my opinion of movies after thinking about it or possibly watching it a second time. But my initial impression, I think I tweeted out that I gave that Mortal Kombat movie a 7.5. I felt like 8 was a little too high, 7 maybe a little too low. So, but I might temper that. I feel like it may lean towards a 7. And that's on my. I feel
like I'm going to be really, really critical about it, but I typically am. So
I figure you'll give it a bit of a lower score. You tend
probably
to do that. But I thought it was better than the one from 1990 or whenever it was.
I really liked the one from the 90s.
I liked it too.
I hate Annihilation though. That movie can go fuck itself.
Oh yeah. But I liked this one better. I just did. Had a very strong beginning. Kind of lagged a little in the middle, but it had a very strong beginning and a pretty good end, I thought.
Well, there's only one thing that worried me, and I'm going to ask you this, because it's not going to be much of a spoiler. The create a character that they put in there. Does he actually have a good story arc, or is he a Gary Stu?
No, he's definitely not. He's definitely not a Gary Stu. 100%. No, I thought he was good. And I said this to Rick. I don't think he detracted. I think it was really unnecessary. I mean, they obviously had to have someone be the main character. I don't know why they didn't make him some existing character.
Why Liu Kang was just not the main character of the movie?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't have to be. I think
no, it could have been anybody. But like, if you're gonna just randomly choose anyone,
well, let me put it this way: they could have made him another. There's a specific character that they absolutely could have made him, and I wish that they had. It would have been a lot cooler. I don't know if you want me to tell you exactly.
Yeah, just tell me.
But they could have made him Scorpion.
Oh, okay.
It would have been a bit of a retcon, but they could have very easily turned him into Scorpion. He had certain ties to that character, and that I feel like they almost did. Like they were on the verge of making him into Scorpion, and then they're like, "Nah, let's make him some new character." But you know,
I mean, they also very easily could have made him a certain Hollywood actor that they decided not to put in the movie.
Nah, he couldn't. No, that wouldn't have worked. At least with the storyline that they did.
Well,
I mean,
I'm also assuming that they would have changed the storyline to fit whatever their decision was.
But I'm just saying, with very little changes, they could have totally made him Scorpion. Very little. It would have been very easy. But I'll tell you, it didn't detract. I mean, he wasn't. His abilities were rather boring and uninteresting. But other than that, he was a good character. He had an arc.
Okay.
You know,
that's mostly all I care about.
So,
and that he wasn't played by Mila Jovovich.
Yeah, right. No, he was 100%. I mean, at the beginning, not a very heroic character at first, and he actually had some character growth throughout the movie. So
that's good.
You know, it was good. I liked it. They had Timothy says they had a certain Easter egg that hinted, well, yeah, it's not even an Easter egg. They just flat out said it at the end. Johnny Cage will be in the sequel. I mean, they pretty much came out.
And starts the Mortal Kombat cinematic universe.
Yeah, basically, if there's a sequel, they just flat out said, yeah, Johnny Cage.
Well, here's my problem too, that they even said might have a cinematic universe. If we end up with just a straightforward line, a progression of sequels, that's not a cinematic universe.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's necessarily...
Yeah. It's like when they're saying the Fast and Furious cinematic universe. That is a very new thing, because that only happened as of when Hobbs and Shaw, or whatever it's called, was their own movie. That was a spin-off movie on the side of the main progression. That's when it became a cinematic universe. Up until that point, it was just a lineage of movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know if maybe Timothy's saying that there was an uproar and they said he will be in the sequel. So maybe they did a reshoot for that final scene, because the final scene was basically like, okay, calm down, everyone. There's going to be Johnny Cage. I mean, it was like right in your face.
And letting you know, Rick, this isn't the actual topic of today's episode. This is just what we opened with.
Yeah.
We're not spending this whole even half hour talking about Mortal Kombat. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I think it could. I mean, obviously that they're going to try for a trilogy. I'm sure. Just kind of depends. Depends on how well this goes.
There was actually quite a few Easter eggs. I pointed out a couple to Marsupial that he didn't notice at first.
Yeah,
as long as you don't tell me what they are.
I went back and watched the scene that you were talking. I realized that while that scene was going on, I was doing something else for like 5 minutes, and I totally missed all of that. So I had to go. I went back and watched it, and so that was kind of cool. Like, I didn't think that if I looked away for 5 minutes that I would miss much, but I did. Apparently.
And there's probably a little bit more than even what I realized, because I don't know, enough about Mortal Kombat,
Mm-hmm.
Well, heck, the one I noticed just in, going over the characters afterwards on Wikipedia,
Yeah. It was interesting. I kind of liked how they took characters from they didn't make this like this is Mortal Kombat 1. They took characters from 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even later, and mashed them all up, which was really pretty cool, I thought. So, but anyway, I don't want to talk too much more about it because
I would like to still see it, because I'm the one of those guys that I get like really, really uppity about spoilers and stuff. And if even like the slightest thing that crosses my threshold of exploration happens, I'll just go ahead and not even watch something for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Like it'll just ruin the whole thing for me. Yeah.
It was definitely better than the original Mortal Kombat movies.
See?
I will say that.
Rick agrees.
Well, I'll have to judge that for myself. Because there are certain reasons why I like the original so much. And as cheesy it can be, the original actually was pretty tight to what was known of the lore at the time. Now, there's a lot more lore that's happened since then, but that also means that this movie can be a lot lazier with it too, because there's a lot more they could be off by.
Yeah. I will just say, I mean, it wasn't great. It wasn't like a great movie, and I will admit that some of the acting was a little but some of it was good. So, like I said, for me, 7.5. For you, you might have a bit of a lower score, but I did like it better than the original.
The real question is, am I going to like it more or less than Dragon Ball Evolution?
I have no idea. Here's what I do like. I like that they made it rated R.
Yeah. Well,
Like
see, that's the thing. It should always be. We're talking about like one of the first 3 M-rated games in existence. It should be rated R to match.
Yeah.
Oh, the blood and gore that's supposed to be Mortal Kombat.
There was a lot of blood and gore.
Now we're just waiting for the Night Trap movie.
And the original was PG-13, right? So
yes, I believe so.
There's like no blood. It's like, yeah.
There was a skull.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Banned in China.
Actually, I do believe that movie is banned in China.
I'm sure.
There's the scene where Scorpion, like his mask gets removed. It's just a skull underneath it with like flames behind him.
Yeah. I don't know if they're gonna make a Night Trap movie.
They should. It'll be awful, but they should.
So what is the actual topic of today, anyways?
That's what I want to know.
So, I've got 2 potential topics to talk about. And if those run out of time, we could always talk about Pokemon Snap, which is coming out. They just put up a new activity map on their website that lets you explore the region ahead of time, which is pretty
Nice.
cool. But I'll let you decide, or we can flip a coin for it. What sounds more interesting? Rooster Teeth or the Konami code?
By Rooster Teeth, I take it you mean the channel or whatever, the people that
The company,
do
yes.
like death battle type stuff.
I don't know. That might make me angry. Will that make me angry?
It actually might make you happy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, Rooster Teeth it is. AT&T is considering selling Rooster Teeth.
Do they own Rooster Teeth?
Yes, AT&T owns Rooster Teeth. Rooster Teeth is under the Warner Media brand of things, which AT&T owns.
And they also own DC. Right?
Yes. They also own Cartoon Network and a number of different things. Crunchyroll as well. AT&T owns Crunchyroll.
AT&T's, I feel like they've been selling off. Aren't they also selling off DirecTV?
Do they
I've
own
heard.
DirecTV? Because they have their own Uverse. That sounds like there'd be some antitrust problems if they also own DirecTV.
I think.
Because they have their own cable company that's AT&T Uverse. I feel like there would be antitrust problems if they own DirecTV as well.
They do.
That's weird. Maybe they're being forced into that sale.
Well, it says existing deal. No, what does this mean? I guess it says Back in February, AT&T spun out DirecTV as a separate company. So I don't know what that means exactly. I guess that means DirecTV is now a separate company.
I don't know how they stopped being a separate company in the first place. Because back in the day, DirecTV and AT&T were direct competitors.
Well, AT&T acquired DirecTV in 2015 for $48.5 billion.
I'm wondering how that was ever allowed.
It paid $67 billion actually to buy DirecTV. I don't know. I guess they convinced the FCC that, you know, Comcast and the cable companies were their competitors.
Yeah, it's like, well, you guys drive on like lines underground. They transmit via satellite. You guys aren't in direct competition, even though you're providing the exact same service otherwise.
No, they did it. It was under Obama.
How much of a difference would that be than Disney buying all these movie companies?
Okay, the difference is that these are providers. These aren't actually like property, like intellectual property owners. When they buy all these movie companies, they're buying them for their intellectual property. And movies themselves, these different like Universal and stuff like that, back in the day, weren't directly competing with each other in any way except for bidding which theaters will pick up their movies and such, right? The reason these guys are directly competing is because cable providing is a land business for the most part up until we get to the point of satellites, right? This is it's almost like a telephone provider in that way, like a telephone line. They're marking down for individual people, and they will be the only person that brings this service to you. It's a very different business model. Now, I guess their argument was that since they didn't run with like phone lines or cable lines or anything, and that they ran via satellite, that this was not direct competition in the same way, which I guess there's probably some merit to that argument. I just know if I was a judge, I'd be like, but you're still doing the same thing.
But having competition would be the question. They should have competition.
They should have competition. Yes.
Yeah. But they're saying that they do have competition with cable companies.
Well, they're saying that the only way that I could see this not being antitrust, because this is the equivalent of buying out your competition to create a monopoly, is that satellite and cable aren't directly competing with each other because cable is competing for territory and satellite is not. Right. So this wouldn't be the equivalent of taking out your competition because this isn't your competition. You're buying another facet.
Mm-hmm. Well, however they did it, they paid $67 billion, but when they spun it off this year, it's only now worth $16 billion. So obviously they didn't do a very good job of competing or whatever.
Yeah. Apparently.
So
they ran it into the ground.
Right. So AT&T is not doing so well. Now they're spinning off Rooster Teeth. Huh?
Well, they've been not doing well in general, and it's mostly Warner Media has been leaking money for quite some time now, with DC, with Cartoon Network. The only thing I think under the branch that falls under Cartoon Network that hasn't been like dropping money is Hanna-Barbera. In fact, that Scoob movie that happened recently did really, really well. But Crunchyroll has been losing money too. They did a lot of firing recently. Remember, within the last couple of years, they did the huge layoffs over at Rooster Teeth and Crunchyroll and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. They sold Crunchyroll to Sony.
Yeah, they did.
That's because I would think because of all the wokeness that they're leaking money, obviously.
It probably has something to do with that. To some degree, there's probably also a degree of in tangent to the wokeness, the people you're hiring are probably really bad with money, and there's actually bad business decisions being made on top of that. Not just like content decisions, but like where the money's going and how things are handled are probably also getting fucked up.
Yeah.
Looks like AT&T sold their Puerto Rican phone operations. They sold their stake in Hulu. They sold a Central Europe media group.
Yeah,
And
I'm
all their
wondering how
offices
they're
there.
still in business, to be honest, with how much they've just been bleeding over the years.
They have so many assets they can just sell, and
Yeah.
they have a ridiculous amount of assets.
See, I think this is actually the goal, right? Let all of these companies bleed so much that they have to start selling off all their assets. Like, even just let Disney start collapsing to the point that they have to start selling things off until everything just reduces back down to the small companies they were in the first place. And all of these monoliths will just take care of themselves over time.
Yeah.
Probably.
There we go. Let Cross Comics become, really
I mean,
wealthy,
look.
and then I'll buy Marvel from them.
You don't
Well,
want Marvel,
I mean,
Rick.
it's almost to the point that, they could sell DC to like Ethan Van Sciver, all caps comics at this point. He could probably get a loan for however much DC is worth. But the problem to me is that they bought all these companies, but then they didn't manage them.
Yeah.
They let them do their own thing, and that was a mistake. It was like, okay, you're buying this company because it's profitable now, but then they're not paying attention that the companies
Well, I
they're
think it's
buying are
worse than that.
changing and losing profitability.
I don't think they bought any of the companies because
Yeah.
they were profitable at the time that they bought them. In fact, a lot of these companies were making even less money when they bought them, and they thought they'd be making more off of them. Most of these companies, outside of certain ones like the telecom companies that they brought up, and that's just to get more territory, right? It's the land business at that point. But a lot of these small things like Rooster Teeth, they bought them for property rights, right? Intellectual property rights, because they thought they could make money off of them. Like Ruby was blowing up big when Full Screen / Rooster Teeth, they merged together. That's when they were bought out by Warner. Like, these things had their own intellectual properties at the time with things like Ruby and stuff. That they're like, well, maybe we can make games, maybe we can make movies off of these properties we're picking up, right? That's why they bought DC way back in the day. It had nothing to do with DC being profitable. DC was already bleeding money, say, even back in the 90s. But what they wanted those movie rights so they can make stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and then they just go mess that up.
So what does Rooster Teeth do? Is it an animation studio?
Now it is an animation studio, yes. Technically, you could say it always was, but when Rooster Teeth started, they did what we now know as Machinima, which also became its own company that then went out of business, and I actually believe it was Full Screen / Rooster Teeth that bought up a lot of the properties when Machinima went out of business. But they started with Red vs. Blue, which is making movies in game engines, right? They went into Halo multiplayer. They added a camera, so it's like another character out there acting as the camera, and they would dub over everything that was happening in there. They started telling a story, and at the same time, they also started doing some live action shorts about what they're doing in the office and stuff, and eventually they grew into the larger company they are. They did Let's Play videos, and they were basically a video production company that turned into an animation company.
So do they actually do the animation for Ruby?
Yes. Yeah, Ruby, they actually animate there. There was a guy named Montiel, God rest his soul, and he was an animator on the internet that they picked up. He helped with Rooster Teeth's Red vs. Blue Season 10 and on, doing the choreography for the fights and stuff in there. And then they gave him his own show, and that evolved into Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
And then he died in like season 1 of Ruby. So
So is that kind of like
by themselves?
Is that kind of like college humor in that, they produce videos and they make money off of them, like YouTube ad revenue?
Well, they did for the longest time, yeah. They had their own site too, where they would have their sponsors, as they called them. This was like way before the Patreon model or anything. And you could become a sponsored member of Rooster Teeth, and that would give you access to everything like a week or so earlier than it actually came out on YouTube or other sites.
Mm-hmm. So they were probably hit hard by all the adpocalypse.
They actually weren't hit that hard because most of their money was coming off their site at that point in time.
Yeah. So
And
what
merch.
is?
They made a lot of money off of merch, but they also sold like DVDs. It wasn't just like they were selling shirts; they were selling like the type of stuff that a professional production company would sell. Right? You'd get DVD collections of their shows and stuff like that.
Yeah. So
I was wondering, wait, what did Rooster Teeth go under?
yeah. No, they're AT&T is exploring selling it.
Yes, they're considering it at the moment.
Who's gonna buy it?
I don't know. Who would buy
Fox.
it? Like,
Or is Vox owned by AT&T? I don't know. Who knows?
yeah. No, Fox
Yeah.
is owned by Disney.
Vox with a
Oh,
V.
Vox. I don't know who owns Vox. Why would Vox buy them?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll find
So,
some
like-
money. I might buy them and get them to produce cross comments videos.
Rick, you ain't got no money.
So what? No, I know.
Well,
Like
that's the problem.
Hero Hay talks about Rooster Teeth and that other. What's that other? The dubbing studio. The one that Vic Mignogna used to work at.
Funimation, which is owned by Sony.
Okay.
This is
Well,
why I
what
was
is Ru-
confused when they were able to sell Crunchyroll to Funimation, because the two of them do the same thing. And I'm not quite sure how antitrust works on a smaller scale thing like that, because that's not necessarily direct competition. They also both make originals too. But Crunchyroll was a dubbing thing first, / a hosting site for anime. And now Sony owns both of them.
I think they're too small to worry about.
Because there's plenty of other competition out. It's not like we're getting to the size of like Goliaths and stuff here.
Yeah. So, what has Rooster Teeth done wrong that has annoyed people lately? I
Lately,
feel like.
well, they were
I feel
wrapped
like-
up in the Vic situation too.
Oh, they were.
Yeah. Because he was
What?
on Ruby specifically. He was doing a voice for one of the villains, and they after that whole situation, like, yeah, well, he's not coming back. We're gonna cast somebody else.
But they didn't like make a statement about it like Funimation did. Stupid.
No, they did.
As a company.
Yeah. They like made a statement on Twitter about it.
But didn't they? Did they actually like say? Did they just say he's not coming back, or did he say he's not coming back because X, Y, Z?
Some solidarity type statement, from what I remember.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
'Cause I know-
it was
I know
like in
Funimation-
solidarity with like Funimation and stuff like that. Because a lot of voice actors cross over at both of the companies.
Sure. Because
They're
I
both
know that
located
like
here in Texas.
Funimation stupidly went out and just basically accused him of shit, like on Twitter.
Oh no. They weren't. They were just standing in solidation. That solidarity.
Yeah, so probably. I mean, they haven't been sued, so
Yeah.
obviously they didn't directly defame him. But so who are some of the people that cross over between those two companies? People like Jamie
I don't
Markey and-
remember a lot of them off the top of their name. I mean, Vic was one of them at the time.
Yeah.
There's quite a few people that, they just have. It's a 4-hour drive at most if traffic's heavy, right? 4 to 4.5 heavy traffic. If it's a day where nobody's traveling, you get there in like 3 hours between DFW and Austin. Funimation's up here in DFW. Rooster Teeth is down in Austin. And most voiceover work is done in home studios these days anyway, so people just send files over.
Yeah, see, this is the thing though. Like, if somebody could buy Rooster Teeth, I mean, Vic was going to be a director at Funimation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if someone was smart, they could buy Rooster Teeth and make him the director.
Well, it would probably
Turner
cause a lot of
suggested-
people to quit, though, right? So you'd be taking a gamble by doing that. It'd probably be a smart gamble, but it would still be a gamble. You'd be losing a lot of talent, probably necessary, and then you'd have to hire a bunch of new people on.
Yeah. Yeah, just hire new people.
Yeah.
There's plenty of voice actors out there. They're a dime a dozen.
Oh, I'm not talking about
No.
just the voice actors. Animators. There's a bunch of people that... Because people have already decided on that situation, how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
And these are very stupid principled people. I mean, I wouldn't say they have real principles, but what they consider their principles, they will stand to, and they will quit the company.
Yeah. So what? They're all a dime a dozen. They're all replaceable.
Yeah, well, I think the real thing is you have to take Rooster Teeth out of Austin if you were going to do that, right? You'd actually have to move it to a place where where people would want to move to, because you're not going to be able to hire new people in Austin for the most part that run in that industry, because most of the people in that industry that live in Austin are already on that side of the fence.
All right, move it to Dallas.
Yeah, it would probably be better off. There's outside of Dallas, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I can't understand why Funimation is such a small group of people. Like, they use the same people over and over and over and over.
The thing is, they don't have to, though. They have such a large register, but the fact of the matter is, the same people that you hear in every single show, like you hear Chris Sabat in like every single show, right? And sometimes he'll do multiple voices. You know, he's the CEO.
Yeah.
And then you have like their voice directors would just cast themselves in most of the roles and their friends, right?
Yeah.
It's like they have a whole list of people they could be contacting. People also do blind auditions to Funimation and stuff like that. But instead you just hear the same people over and over because they're the ones directing the shows.
Yeah, and then all these shows end up being boring because it's all the same actors, the same voices over and over and over. And it's like, bring in some new talent. All these people.
You know who's actually a studio I really like here in the Dallas area? That if you want to get into voice acting, I highly recommend sending a reel to. I keep forgetting to take the time to record a reel and send it in. But it's Studio Sound Cadence. Sound Cadence is a professional dubbing studio, but they're also just a recording studio in general. If you have some money, you want to go and use their equipment, you can drive up the Sound Cadence and you can record stuff there. That's what they make most of their money on, is people wanting to record in their studio. People record music, acting, whatever. But they also do dubs. They've worked with Team 4-Star. If whoever's here familiar with Team 4-Star, they were known for Dragon Ball Z Abridged, amongst a bunch of other things. But they also, Team 4-Star and Sound Cadence dubbed the movie Hells. And it was basically known as a Team 4-Star dub because much of the people in that dub of Hells were all just the Team 4-Star members. And then some other people. And what the way that Sound Cadence does, and they do games, anime, stuff like that, is they don't tell you the name of the person when they're giving you the reels. What they ask you is, what type of voice are you looking for this role? And then they'll pick out, like, almost at random, 6 reels that fall under that category. And they'll let you listen to them, and you pick the one that sounds the best. Then they'll hook you up with the actor after that. And they have like a huge range of people in there, and it creates more diversity of sound, because it's not just like, oh, I want to hire this guy for every single thing. It's that voice sounds right for the character.
Yeah.
It's basically blind auditions, but put into like a new RNG type spin.
Yeah, that's the problem with all these nepotistic companies, is that, you know, all the voices all sound alike.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
I say I should start my own dubbing studio.
I think so. Well, it was frustrating when whoever it was, Toho or whatever, Toei, what is it called? The Dragon Ball Z company.
Oh, Toei.
Yeah. When Toei was rumored to be looking for a different studio other than Funimation, but then they didn't. They just stuck with the same.
There is an E in there. It is technically like Toei, but people just say Toei. Yeah. It's easier to roll off. No, nobody in Japan looks at you weird for saying Toei.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to Toei the line.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's confusing because you get it confused with the, you know, Ron Toye.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's because they thought they were biting, right? So it was they got rid of what's his name, Sean Schemmel, for the voice of Goku, and because they canned him, they're like, okay, we'll keep you on now. They're Japanese. They're disconnected from this. They thought, okay, the problem was solved. They don't understand how deep all of this runs, and it wasn't even the Vic situation that made them mad. It was when they found that dub that was hidden that they did with all of the sexual lines and stuff in it.
Yeah, they blamed it all on Sean Schemmel.
Yeah. Even though, like, well, because you can't get rid of Sabat. He's the CEO.
Right.
I think they should have just stopped working with Sony in general. Not just Funimation, but they should have like held this on Sony itself, because there's a lot of Japanese companies that are kind of soured with Sony for like leaving Japan and becoming an American company, and they were already becoming an American company for years before they even left Japan. Like this was something that was a long process. You could see it starting way back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem was they needed to have some other company step up and give them an alternative.
Yeah,
and
that's
the
issue.
other company apparently gave them an alternative. So.
I mean, so the problem is there's no company that gives them the amount of alternative that they would need for Funimation, right? Because Funimation has such a large studio that even though you hear the same voices over and over, they have the time to dub so many different shows, right? Like how many shows are under Funimation's label every single month? As opposed to like, could Bang Zoom, who was doing a pretty good Dragon Ball Super dub of their own, handle all of the stuff Funimation was doing? Could Sound Cadence handle all of it? They might be able to take one or two shows, but like Funimation's a large studio.
If they were given a big contract, they could expand rapidly.
Yeah.
Take it over, but
I think maybe not even have the big contract, right? Maybe Toei should just take the time and the effort to disperse their contracts across multiple studios, right? Like,
yeah, you would think.
I miss Ocean
Try
Group.
some other.
Do you remember Ocean Group? Anybody remember Ocean Group? They were a Canadian studio back in the day. They were a big studio. They used to dub a lot before Funimation even really came into the scene, and even some after. And Ocean Group did some games. They did some anime. One of the biggest ones they were known for, they did one of the earlier dubs of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z.
Did they do Sailor Moon?
I believe they did have a dub of Sailor Moon. They also had a dub of Ranma 1/2. They were actually the only ones to ever dub Ranma 1/2. They also dubbed Inuyasha. One of the recurring voice actors at Ocean Group was Richard Cox, who is the voice of Inuyasha. They did a lot. They also worked directly with Deke sometimes. So you'd hear some of the same voice actors show up in some of those old Deke shows, since both of them were Canadian companies. I really liked Ocean Group. They did have a problem, and this is why everybody started hopping on the Funimation bandwagon way back in the day. They were inconsistent as fuck, right?
Yeah.
One of the cool things about Funimation is if somebody was going to be the voice actor for a character, they were going to be the voice actor of that character throughout the entire series of the show. Ocean Group, one season, one person might be voicing this character. The next season, somebody else might be. If they're a one-off character that only shows up once a season or something, you may not notice it unless you're like binge watching it. But if it's like somebody that's a main character and you're used to hearing their voice, you're going to notice the second the next season comes around and they're no longer voicing that character. In the Ocean dub, I think they had like 3 different Gokus.
Well, who was doing all the dubbing back in the 80s when they were doing all kinds of like Saturday morning cartoons?
Yeah, no,
and stuff like
Ocean was back then too. They were one of the groups doing that.
Yeah. I feel like there was a lot more competition. And
there was.
And they were able, it seemed like though that they were able to keep the same actors through several seasons of a
it was like
show.
2 or 3, Elric. I don't remember exactly. I remember, but they had more than one Goku in the Ocean dub.
Yeah, I mean, how many seasons of the Smurfs did they have the same voice
Yeah, well,
actors
so
for
a lot of that wasn't even like dubbing groups because that was done here in the U.S. A lot of that was done at, like, say, the Hanna-Barbera studios.
Yeah. But they couldn't do dubbing for other shows.
But, it's not like, so dubbing, you actually need a translator in your studio. That's a big deal. And you need both a translator and you need a voice director who can function as a translator. So sometimes it's the same person doing both those jobs because of limited resources. But the director has to be able to understand the original Japanese to be able to give you proper direction on how you need to, like, execute this line or set of lines, right? Everything in the scene. The difference too is, and you did have this problem, go back to Scooby-Doo and watch in the original series, there were 3 different Velmas. And there were also a couple Daphnes. They didn't even keep the same actors throughout that whole first series of Scooby-Doo. Now, they were pretty close. Unless you're really listening to it, you can't tell. But you could go to, like, IMDb and look, and there were several different actors for the actual original English recording of Scooby-Doo.
I guess most people are focused on Scooby and Shaggy.
Yeah, which they stayed consistent for ever, almost, up until, like, the 2000s. I think, actually, Welker still voices Scooby, as far as I know. He did in the movie, the recent one.
I think he did quit for a while or whatever, and they brought him back. I think he really, I think I heard something about, he made, like, because of him, Shaggy's supposed to be a vegetarian. Because apparently you never see it, in the whole original stuff, you never see him eating meat.
That is a lie. They claim that, but there's been several people that have pulled screenshots that have actually debunked that. They're very rare, but Shaggy has eaten meat in the franchise.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying in the first couple seasons or in the first 2 series or something like that. I don't know for sure. I've never checked it out myself. But
I've completely lost my train of thought.
something about the Scooby-Doo
Oh, I know. I keep asking you. I keep wanting to ask you, why can't they just dub? I mean, when they get the thing, when they get the show or whatever, doesn't it already have subtitles?
Yes
doesn't
and
the
no.
subtitles?
A lot of times they don't. Sometimes the subtitles are actually done by the dubbing studio. They are given a script, the Japanese script, and they need a translator to translate it.
Invariably, though, the subtitles typically are good, and then the dubbing, they change it different from the subtitles.
That also depends, right? If you get a Viz DVD, right? So a lot of times before it will hit a dubbing studio, Viz, if they were involved in, like, say, the reproduction and distribution of the manga in English, Viz will have subtitles added into the distribution of the Japanese DVDs, and those are good. Viz is really, really good at translation.
But for some reason, when they dub it, they change the translation.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also, because if you go and you get, like, the Funimation distribution of the Japanese, the lines that they have for the subtitle will be kind of identical to whatever they're going to dub it as.
But they don't.
Yeah.
So I'm saying Funimation takes something that already has subtitles from some other company.
Well, they don't always.
And they change it. Oh, okay.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, a lot of these dubbing studios are the ones also responsible for the sub.
Yeah.
There's a lot of contracts and stuff that depends on, like, it really decides who's going to be doing what.
Yeah. Well, Funimation is bad at it, I'll just say.
They are. They used to be really
bad.
good. They just kind of got full of themselves. Because you go back to, like, Yu Yu Hakusho, which is, like, one of the earlier, like, good Funimation dubs. The Yu Yu Hakusho dub is great. And they did a lot of changing to it, right? They added a lot of stuff, but even most Japanese viewers, will, if they know English, will say they prefer the English dub of Yu Yu Hakusho, because they really got the spirit of the show down right, pun intended.
Yeah.
Like Yusuke is supposed to be like this really badass Bansho character, like a gangster, right? So they took him from just being like this loudmouth in the Japanese, and they turned him into like the universal insult champion, and he is just like quips and insulting people left and right throughout the whole show, and it is great.
Well,
and that's
what
back
I feel
in
like
the 90s. They suck now.
Yeah. Well, it's just like these movie studios that take an existing IP and add new characters and change things around and don't use the source material. Only this is even more egregious because it's like the source material is literally what's coming out of their mouths, and you just need to translate it into the English version of what's coming out of their mouths, and then they change it completely.
Well, there's also some reasons for that too, in certain cases,
I know, but...
right? Like Elric brings up a good one, and I agree. I don't blame Viz Media for changing the names in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
That's because the names of almost everything in JoJo's are copyrighted material, like band names and song names and stuff like that, trademarks. So in the English dub, they've changed a lot of the names to skirt trademark.
Mm-hmm. Well, but
yeah,
you know, when you confront them online and say this was a bad dub, they pretend like they're baby-brained idiots.
Oh,
and say,
like
if we didn't change it, you wouldn't understand it.
No, especially when they do something stupid too, right? Like the I know one that's probably on the top of your head, when they decide to add a quick quip about Gamergate in the middle of a modern anime, like that's going to age well, or even half their audience understands what they're talking about.
Yeah, and that wasn't in the original, so shut the fuck up.
No, not at all. Like, I even looked at the original. It's not even like you changed it to be a culturally equal reference, right? The original thing was nothing along the same lines or anything like that. It was just some random thing that was inserted in there for no reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Was that the funny bad one that we watched that did that, or was that a different one?
No. See, I don't think anybody would complain about Ghost Stories. Because a lot of that, all the dialogue was changed in that on purpose.
Yeah,
that was the whole point of that show. Yeah.
Yeah. In this one, what we're talking about are shows where they're supposed to be dubbing it with as close to the same words as it was original.
Yeah, and there are some things you have to change. Don't get me wrong. There are a few things, because there are certain cultural things that just don't land no matter how hard you try. A lot of people that speak both languages and understand the culture around it. There's even like Japanese people like, I understand why they changed that. There's no way an American would get what is being said. It's not that they wouldn't understand what you're saying. They just wouldn't get it. Right? And vice versa. That happens in Japan. They change some things that are like culturally American to culturally Japanese so that the Japanese people can get it, because they may not get the American experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And maybe it's something like killing two birds with one stone,
Yeah.
Might not translate so much in Japanese.
Some idioms are like that, though. It's usually pretty easy to find some type of colloquial idiom that matches almost one-to-one in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Accents are like that too. I can't remember the specific place. I believe it's northern Japan, though. There's a area where there's an accent from it, and anytime they use that accent in media, it's supposed to make people sound like a tough guy. That's why they use that accent specifically. So when people hear that accent, often what they do is they translate it to like a Brooklyn accent, because a Brooklyn accent makes you sound like a tough guy, like Joey Wheeler. That's why you've got so many people from Japan with Brooklyn accents. Because that's how they decide to match it. If they want somebody to sound like a tough guy, and it is supposed to be a different accent than, say, like the Tokyo-centric accent, they'll go and they'll find a tough guy accent. And almost every translator has universally agreed that accent should become a Brooklyn accent.
Mm-hmm. Yo, Yugi, you want to take care of this guy?
Yeah.
Is he bothering you? Come on.
So we
got the heart of the
things
cards,
like, it's understandable, right?
Yeah. Paisan.
Yo, Tristan, why you got googly eyes for my sister?
That's right. I'm gonna kick your spaghetti bending butt back to Milan.
Yeah, and if it's Kyoto, which is weird too, right? But I guess it kind of applies. So Kyoto has kind of become like a tech center because a lot of these gaming companies are in Kyoto, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of like Samsung's in Kyoto, and Sony used to be in Kyoto, but it's a southern accent. Anyone from Kyoto should probably sound like this, but instead they got like a heavy draw and y'all and how you guys doing? Welcome to Kyoto. And you're like, why? Why? Because it used to be farm country. Yeah. Well, because Kyoto used to be farm country at one point in time before it became like the tech center.
That's all right. I used to work in Austin. Everyone had a southern drawl, and they were very technical.
Yeah, Austin's actually kind of like the tech center of Texas.
Yeah. And I worked with a lot of cowboys. They actually had somebody come in at least a couple people came in with a cowboy hat and boots every day to work at the tech company that I worked at.
Yeah. I mean, you get that almost everywhere.
Houston, we got a problem.
I used to do software for oil rigs, actually, believe it or not.
Well, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see people in cowboy hats and boots all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a common thing. Yeah. Well, actually, I used to know somebody back in elementary school. Her and her dad used to ride a horse to school every single day. They would each ride their horse. He would lead hers back on the way home, and that's just how they got to school. Because I used to live in a cow town, so that there were less than 2,000 people in this town when we moved here. Yeah. It's scary.
So
this town,
how do they decide?
40-something thousand people.
How do they decide if somebody has an English accent?
See,
like a posh English accent.
Usually, it's class-based, right? They associate the posh accent with rich people. Mm-hmm. So you might have somebody who's in the middle of Japan. A lot of times, too, it's people who live close to Mount Fuji that are rich, right? Because they associate that with the royal family and stuff like that, the emperor. So if you're like really rich, you live in a gated mountain, like almost castle, they'll give those people a posh accent. Because they speak like an aristocrat. They don't speak the same way that like the common folk do.
Yeah, I like in Attack on Titan, the royalty all speak with an English accent.
I'll tell you one thing that I hate that's a trend amongst translators. And they did this. Travis has been playing Trials of Mana, and they did this for Charlotte, who is an elfin. But they were originally called sprites back in the original, like the old translation, because the original sprite was small. It was like maybe this big. It's about the size of a Moogle, maybe. Now, I mean, once you get to Trials, it's like, no, she's just short. Other elven are like full human size. This one's just short. It's a midget. But Charlotte is treated like a kid in accent. And they do have diminutive accents in Japanese, right? But for some reason, this type of almost low-educated diminutive accent, instead of becoming like a southern accent, that like a hillbilly or something, they become a child accent, and all their R's and L's become W's. And it's the most annoying fucking thing in the world. I hate it.
They all become Elmer Fudd?
Kind of, except they talk like little kids.
You sound like Billy Madison there.
Yeah. Well, Billy Madison talks like a little kid.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to repeat how many grades? All of them?
That's right. Shampoo is better. I go on first and clean the hair.
No, conditioner is better. That's my favorite part, too. Is like, stop looking at me, Schwan!
Yeah.
God,
yeah, that's interesting how they have to translate the You know, because presumably Japanese has all kinds of accents depending on where you're from, your class, and all that kind of stuff.
It's weird too, right? Because we have a ton of accents here in the States, right? Even up in Canada where Rick is, there's various accents from different places. And you can pick up on slight differences, but typically within an area, accents can be pretty similar, right? Like,
yeah,
you might be able to hear a different accent between somebody in like the DFW area and somebody down in Austin, but it's not super distinct. And almost everybody in DFW that was here their whole life is going to sound pretty similar. But you can hear like a distinct accent between like all of Texas and Oklahoma. Like once you cross that state line, there's almost like a cultural shift, right? And then there's certain accents that you get in different states. But in Japan, a much smaller area, there's like, you could cross a city and people's accents are different.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, here it's like...
That way it's a bit Brit, too, you know? You know, some British person can tell what, you know, neighborhood from.
For the most part, it's interesting how the accents tend to go by state. Like, you could say Southern accent, but a Tennessee accent is very different from an Alabama accent.
Yeah, which is also very different from a Kentucky accent. You can, if you know the areas, you can kind of tell the state, where in the state too. Like, oh, you're clearly from Southern, or you're from like Eastern Tennessee or something like that. Like you can usually generally tell if you know the area.
Yeah, especially if you live in the area, because I could tell the difference. I lived in Nashville for 20 years. I could definitely tell the difference between Nashville and Knoxville. I could tell the difference between Nashville and Birmingham. And I also lived in Wisconsin, and the Wisconsin accent is very different from a Minnesota accent.
Yeah. So, well, like I could tell the difference between the major areas in Texas. And I can also tell you that there is not a distinct difference between Dallas and Fort Worth. And that's probably why DFW is considered its own area. The Metroplex is like, that is a shared culture. So the accents are going to be the same here. But basically, like I can tell you San Antonio from Austin and stuff like that.
Yeah. See, I might not be able to tell, but since you're there.
Yeah.
But then there's like certain distinct ones, like Boston is a very distinct accent versus New York, which is a very distinct accent.
Or anybody can tell if you're from El Paso because you're probably speaking Spanish.
There you go. Probably.
Spanish in a southern drawl.
A little joke here. Because El Paso and Juarez are basically one city that just happens to have the border cutting straight through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends. I have no idea if there are accents that are different in Colorado versus Wyoming versus South Dakota. I have no idea.
Oh, definitely. There's accents that are different in different parts of Colorado. Do you know there are actual parts of Colorado that have basically a Southern accent?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because Colorado was a big ranching area for a really long time. And the sad part is, a lot of what people associate as the Southern accent is just day worker out in the sun accent. You know, like it's kind of like the simple-minded folk. Somebody's got a long draw, but there's a lot of different accents.
You know, like West Virginian accent is very similar to Alabama. So, kind of interesting. So Rooster Teeth on sale.
Hopefully.
Who do you think is going to buy it?
You know who should buy it? Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Just for shits and giggles. He's got the money.
That would be based.
And then close it down. Buy it and then close it out.
Elric was suggesting earlier the Cult of Raven get together and find to rename it Raven Beak.
Yeah, from Rooster Teeth to Raven Beak.
Well, at least it would be less lewd.
Would it? Would it, though?
Yeah.
Well, whoever needs to buy it needs to put Vic in charge.
No, if I had the money to buy it, I would just shut it down. Just be done.
Yeah. But, I mean, is Ruby still ongoing?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. I mean, I hear people like that. So
More the reason to shut it down.
Just to spite people. Oh, you like the show? We're shutting it down.
More so to actually give some honor to the memory of Monty Oom.
Okay.
And with that, it's also 9 o'clock.
It is.
That's been our hour. Thanks for coming, everybody. And we'll see you next time. If you want to support the show, you know how, you know where. Specifically, streamlabs.com/Vomitorium live. Don't have to spell it out. It's a pretty easy thing to find. And we'll see you all tomorrow for the actual full-length Saturday show. Catch us there. I'm sure we'll have a fun time.
Thanks for coming, Rick.
Yeah. Later, all.
Bye.